All of a sudden, my body stopped working. And it's like I just slid to the floor. And I'm like, okay, something's wrong. They brought me upstairs and I lost the ability to talk, lost the ability to walk. And I'm basically either in bed or in a chair. I could get myself up, but then I would be like hanging onto the wall as I'm, trying to get to the kitchen to get a drink of water, hanging onto counters. Eventually my doctor landed on chronic fatigue syndrome. And he was like, well, I'm sorry to say that there's really nothing we can do for it. And really, I don't think anybody gets better from it. I have colleagues who have never been able to return to practicing medicine. And I'm sorry, but this is just what your new life is going to look like. By December, I was able to drive again within my little town. I was able to do dishes. I was able to cook meals. I was able to be online long enough to look up a new recipe and cook a new recipe. I was doing laundry. I was finally feeling like Nicole was back. I was able to move huge stones out of the garden. And I just was so smart about it, right? Like pre-CFS and pre-CFS recovery, Nicole would lift these stones and move them, and she would do it until they were all gone and done. I started back to work last week on a graduated way of doing it. And I cannot tell you how many times these things that I'm learning in this program are saving me daily.
How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Nicole, who just over a year ago, sudden onset of CFS and just hypersensitive nervous system symptoms to the point where she was on the floor. She couldn't function at all. She just hit a wall in the hospital, just really struggling. But then today she's been able to pull herself out of that and really turn her life around in a relatively short period of time. Within a year, she has gone into the depths of an illness like this, but also come out the other side, which is amazing. So Nicole, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the call.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. And want to quickly introduce yourself, a little bit of your background so everybody knows a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. Again, I'm Nicole. I am in Canada. I live in Alberta in a small town. I am 51 years old. Me and my guy are empty nesters. We have 5 kids between the two of us. And I am an executive assistant for my day job. So a lot of cognitive, a lot of, busy stuff. Went from doing that to doing nothing.
Yeah. Wow. So let's jump back in time. How did all of this start? And you got sick around, was it April or May, you said, about a year ago? Right now it's May 2024. When did you get sick?
We've just passed my 1-year anniversary. So the end of April, April 22nd, it was very sudden onset. I was at my parents' house. I was doing stuff, helping them move things. And all of a sudden, my body stopped working. And it's like I just slid to the floor. And I'm like, okay, something's wrong. They brought me upstairs and I lost the ability to talk, lost the ability to walk. They helped me home to rest. The next day I was in the hospital doing all the tests, all the MRIs, all the CTs, all the things. Couldn't lift my arms, couldn't walk. Again, my talking was slurred. My brain is like it had slowed down to the tiniest ability. I couldn't even manage. It's so weird to even explain. I couldn't put thoughts together. And I certainly couldn't get the words to come out of my mouth. It was very scary.
Yeah, no, that sounds terrifying. And I can definitely relate to that. There were some days where, I actually thought I had a mini stroke or something because my body just wasn't working. But do you have any idea what caused this? Because you went from most to just
my doctor said it was vaccine induced. I had my vaccines to do a trip to Mexico. And so one of those that had to be done was the COVID vaccine. And it was, I'll say it's interesting that my doctor aspired it to that, or that's the wrong word, but attached it to that, simply because that's kind of not, he's not like a super progressive doctor. So for him to say that's what caused it, I found it really, really interesting. And I had COVID the year before, and I had just begun to get out of my long COVID. I had like a year of long COVID symptoms, and I had just started to get better. And then I got the vaccine, and then.
And okay, so you actually were dealing with some of the stuff leading up to it, and you kind of built yourself up, and then you take the
Yeah.
vaccine, and then boom, puts you.
Yeah.
And did you crash even harder after you had that vaccine?
Yeah, it was a delayed reaction though. It was about a month or so, and then all of a sudden, it just was, like I said, I was on the floor.
Yeah, yeah, wow. So yeah, that must have been super scary. So you're in the hospital the next day. They're running all these tests. Your brain doesn't seem to be functioning. What happens next? Like, what do the next few weeks look like for you?
Oh, I was in a really dark place. They released me from the hospital. They couldn't find anything. All the tests were normal. Everything they kept saying, oh, we think you have this, we think you have this. And then the tests would say it's not. So then they sent me home. And so I'm at home by myself, and I'm basically either in bed or in a chair. I could get myself up, but then I would be like hanging onto the wall as I'm, trying to get to the kitchen to get a drink of water, hanging onto counters. I mean, I can laugh at the symptoms now, but at the time it was terrifying. And the people around me watching me, trying to drink a little glass of water with two hands, shakily, can barely lift it. Just, I remember the looks in the faces of my loved ones, how terrified they were for me that this was happening. So it was pretty dark, right? You don't have any answers. You're on waiting lists to see specialists. They start ticking off all these boxes. And then finally, after seeing the neurologist and everybody's saying nothing's wrong with you, and I'm like, how can you tell me that? I can barely walk, right? If I unload the dishwasher, then I'm stuck back in bed. Like, I remember unloading the dishwasher one plate at a time, and the plate was like too heavy, and I would lift it to the counter, and then I'd go sit down, and then I would lift it from the counter. Like, it sounds crazy to share it, right? Unless you've been there, it sounds crazy. But eventually my doctor landed on chronic fatigue syndrome. And he was like, well, I'm sorry to say that there's really nothing we can do for it. You just have to you have to push, but not too hard. And really, I don't think anybody gets better from it. I have colleagues who have never been able to return to practicing medicine. And I'm sorry, but this is just what your new life is going to look like.
Wow.
And so then you spend a lot of time just sitting with that and what the implications of what that means.
Yeah. And at that time you were, not really functional. You're just pretty much staying at home, very weak and sensitive. And then you have a doctor tell you that. It definitely, I never had a doctor tell me I was never going to get better. They were always just like, yeah, you're fine. But that must have been crazy for an actual doctor to say, yeah, people usually don't get better from this. So during this time period, I mean, what's going through your mind during all of this?
Oh, it just the implications. It went from, how am I ever going to be productive again? I find my worth in giving to others and serving others and caretaking others. Like, how am I going to be a partner? How am I going to be a mom? How am I going to help take care of my parents? What about work? How am I not going to ever go back to work? How am I going to support myself? I was very lucky to be able to get on short-term and long-term disability. So I had that, but that's not the same as your income. And then you think of your future. I'm 51 years old. Like, I still have all these years left to contribute and to do things. And I just thought, no, I don't accept this. I don't accept this.
Yeah. Wow. So what was your family thinking when you're going through all of this?
Oh, I mean, they had no doubt that it was real. They saw it happen to me. They saw whenever I would, talk a little too much, my speech would slow right down and it would stop. And so they were so afraid. They were afraid of doing too much, of pushing too much, being around too many people, having too many conversations would birch. My body would just scream to a halt. So it was hard. Like, their hearts were breaking. I mean, my mom would call me to see how I was doing, and she'd be bawling, right? She'd come to my house to visit, to see if she could do a little cleaning or something, and she would sit on the couch bawling.
Wow.
Which, would in turn would affect my emotions, which would affect my symptoms. I just didn't understand that at the time. So it's hard, right? It's so hard when you see someone you love in pain and hurting and there not be any answers.
Yeah, for sure. And, sometimes we forget or we don't realize how hard it is for them in the moment as well, because it's like they want to help, but their hands are tied, right? So I remember my dad and grandma and, some people close to me, they really wanted me to get better, but they're just seeing me get worse and worse. And there's nothing they really could do other than tell me, hey, it's going to be okay. So it's almost like we're both in the trenches together. Obviously I was feeling worse than they were, but I never really looked at it that way until after. I did feel pretty bad at the time. I almost felt like a burden sometimes too, because
Yes.
everybody's is bending over backwards for me and I'm getting worse. So I'm like, this does not seem to be trending very well. And how much longer are they going to care for me for? So you start getting in your own head.
You do. At one point, I was looking at my partner, and he was so wonderful and so supportive, and he's doing all the cooking and the cleaning, and he's doing all the things, and he's always telling me, go sit down, right? Like it hurts them, it physically hurts them to watch you holding onto walls, trying not to fall over. And at one point I was thinking, like, is it kinder if I just go stay with my parents? Like maybe I just need to let him be, let him, like your brain takes you down all these crazy paths.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of guilt for some reason, and I was like, why are they helping me so much? Well, that's
Yes.
because they love me, right? And they're not going to stop until I get better. So that was one of my motivations, actually, is to get better for them, because they were working so hard. There were definitely some times where I was like, I was so depressed. I was like, what's the point of all of this? And I was like, okay, that's the reason for all of this, because my family, they're working too hard for me, so I better pull through this thing for them. It became my motivation. So what kind of things did you try to get better, maybe in your first 6 months of having this stuff?
Oh, I was trying all sorts of meditation techniques. I was trying some of like the cold therapies. There was a bunch of things about, laying on the floor, laying on your back, different stretches to try, different ways to turn your head. Tried massage. I think I tried the osteopath.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I tried everything, all the supplements, right? Anybody that suggested something that helped them feel better, I tried that. It just feels like a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're probably researching answers. That's where you got the supplement ideas from. But I remember being in those certain groups online and I was just terrified because it's like a fear frenzy. It's like, try this, try that.
It's a black hole.
Yeah, it was crazy. So luckily I didn't spend too much time there. Once I realized, I'm like, okay, this is very negative. It's definitely not helping. So I started just looking at other YouTube videos. So when did you go out there and come across, this different approach to recovering from CFS?
I didn't find you until the fall of last year. I kept searching and searching and searching, and like I said, I just was not aligning with so many things. There were other programs or more medical kind of approaches to things, and the amount of money they wanted for them was astronomical, and I just thought I can't take a chance on something that's not going to work. And then it wasn't really until I came across your videos and heard that you had recovered, and then seeing all the thrivers that had recovered, and I was like, okay, this isn't a one-off. This is like something that's happening all the time. And then I joined the Facebook group, and I started attending the Q&As that the coaches were having. And then and I remember I was sitting in the dark, right? Sitting in the dark, I had my eyes closed. I could barely handle it. Sometimes I could only manage 5 minutes, sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes a whole call. But I just would be listening and just kind of soaking it all up. And first of all, it was to know I wasn't alone, right? That there were all these other people out there with questions like I had. Then there were all these coaches and you who were like treating this like no big deal. It's just a thing. It's just a nervous system. You don't need to panic. You don't need to freak out. It's okay. Like you'll get better. And it was like fresh water for me. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is what I need. This is what I need. And I just kept listening to all the free stuff. And then I think you had a Thriver Summit in the fall. And I listened to that. And by this time I had heard, so many things here and there, and I was so skeptical. And yours was not about money. And I have to say that was like a really big thing for me. Yours was not about money. You just said you can get better from all the free stuff. You do not have to join my program. And I'm like, what? I thought he's selling something. I thought this, and it was like, okay, this also aligns with me. And so like I said, I just kept listening to all the free stuff, attending all of the free things that I could. And I started getting better. And it was like the first week that I started applying stuff, I noticed a difference. And I was like, oh, thank God, finally, I can actually believe, right? Not just, like when you have a belief, but you don't really believe it.
Yeah.
By this time, I was actually believing it was possible. And so that was probably November that I started really applying the stuff. By December, I was able to drive again within my little town. I was able to do dishes. I was able to cook meals. I was able to be online long enough to look up a new recipe and cook a new recipe. I was doing laundry. I was finally feeling like Nicole was back. But then it was December and it was Christmas and I did too much. I did too much social interaction. Yeah, that's my own fault, but I did too much social interaction and I just kind of sucked up all the goodness of Christmas. And in January, I was bedbound again.
Oh, wow.
I crashed hard and couldn't get out of bed for a few days. Then I was back into my chair again. And I just was like, you know what? If I keep doing what I'm doing, in 1 year's time, I'm going to be right here. And that is not what I want. And I just recognized that for me, I needed a little more help. And I couldn't get the mindsets back on my own after that crash, even though I knew I had the tools. I just couldn't seem to get it back. So you had a 7-day free trial and I joined that. And in that 7 days, I attended everything that I could attend. And I did all the free content in there that I could attend in that 7-day trial. And I just was like, yeah, this is for me. And I don't know how I'm going to afford it, but I'm going to make it happen. And I did. And it's life-changing. And not just for the chronic fatigue, not just for that. It has changed me as a person. It has changed my mindset. It has changed the way I think. To know that I have a part in this, not to say that chronic fatigue is my fault. Let me be very clear. I'm not saying that it is my fault, but I had thoughts and actions that I was doing that were contributing to my symptoms, and just the freedom in that, right? Amazing. Amazing.
And it makes a huge difference too once you realize and kind of accept that, wow, this thing didn't just fall from the sky or it's some curse that fell onto me and I have no power over it, and I just have to cope with it. Once you realize, wow, no, there's a reason this happened. There's actually some science behind it. So we just need to reverse engineer all this so we could get out of this situation. I think it gives people a lot more power because now they're in control again. Whereas I think one of the biggest fears in having this is not being in control at all of your body, of your thoughts, of being able to go brush your teeth or take a shower or cook food. So you lose control of almost everything.
Yes.
That starts to come back once you start to implement the methods and the neuroplasticity, So for you, because obviously you came in January, you joined, and then you didn't crash after that like you did back in November and December when you built yourself up. Yeah. What do you think the biggest difference was in terms of your approach to things? Why didn't you crash after January?
It's the community. It's huge because none of the tenets of what we've learned change, right? Like mindset is everything. You have to respond well. You have to stay in the gray. But being in the community and seeing the wins, that people are having consistent wins, doesn't matter how small, doesn't matter how large. And then just being there and listening to the coaches. I mean, just the golden nuggets. Like we're not talking like every single call had golden nuggets, aha moments, right? Every single one had things. Like I have a notebook full of things that I've written down because there were so many things that resonated for me that were happening in my brain. So because I was so immersed in this, I was able to not go off on any of these overthinking tangents or fear of certain things. Like it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what I'm feeling. It's just a symptom. It's bang. That's it. It's just a symptom. It's just the nervous system. But I'm feeling this today. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's just my nervous system. And being in there was just able to, it's like it was able to focus everything, focus it down really tight and sharp. And I was just able to keep it all there. And that's not to say that I didn't have good days and bad days, right? Like anytime you're trying to expand, you're going to get the adjustment periods. But having everybody consistently say, adjustment periods are good. They're good, right? Like you're hearing that every day that you're on the calls. It's good. Good job. Good job that you expanded. Good job that you had your CFS headache today. Good, good job that you're feeling sick. Like it's a different mindset. And it's just, although you might say those things in all the free content online, it's different than hearing it every single day from other people who are going through the same thing. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that was the difference for me. Right. The encouragement in there, the fact that the community in there is not negative. It is not doomsaying. Like there's no focusing. We're not even focusing on the symptoms. It's not, you'll never believe what happened to me today or what I'm feeling. No. We're going to talk about the wins. I had a headache, but I had this, and it's not, we don't go into it in detail, right? We don't ruminate. We don't overthink. We just go on. And there's something really magical there.
Yes, we focus on the solution.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Very solution focused. Whatever energy we do have, because we know people have limited energy, let's put that into a solution. Let's put that into focusing on the right things. And I think just having those constant reminders, like you may have watched my videos and hundreds of hours of it, right? And sometimes it just clicks all of a sudden when you see it being applied in real life. Like if someone brings an issue up or brings up a flare up or a certain symptom or recovery curveball, and then you're like, wait, I deal with that too. I'm curious about this answer. And then the coaches answer it, and then it's exactly what you needed to hear. And you're like, aha. So a lot of it's the same frameworks, the same principles, just said in sometimes slightly different ways, but also applied to real life examples. And I think that's what really makes a big difference, because you get to see how these frameworks are used in so many different situations. And people dealing with this stuff, there's a lot of overlapping situations, right? We're all kind of in the same boat, dealing with similar things physically, but also mentally and emotionally. We also go through these same hurdles and roadblocks, So what were some of your first few big wins after January? Because that was not even 5 months ago. It was January 31st, I believe.
Yeah.
We had that
31st.
event. So that was
the first big wins. First big wins I was able to drive again. And that took me a bit because I had lost that. Be able to drive, not just within my tiny little town, but to the next town over, and then into Calgary, the next big city over, and then be able to drive there and back. Like getting the freedom back was huge. Being able to get the cognitive back, have some of the brain fog go away, be able to put thoughts together, be able to remember things again. That just felt so good to hear something and be able to remember it and share it with somebody else. The first time that I had a full day of work in the house where I was able to vacuum and mop. I was able to clean my kitchen and clean my bathrooms. Something was needed to be done in the yard, and I was able to do it. Just these really, really big things. Like even a couple of weeks ago, I was able to move huge stones out of the garden. And I just was so smart about it, right? Like pre-CFS and pre-CFS recovery, Nicole would like lift these stones and move them, and she would do it until they were all gone and done. But from what I learned about myself and in the program, I broke it down, and I worked until my body said stop. Like, I learned in this program how to listen to my body and what symptoms are telling me. So
Mhm.
I can listen, and I can stop, and I can walk away if something's not done, and I can come back to it later. And these are huge things, right? Like, in my life before, I was an all or nothing person, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would go, 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 and then I would crash, right? And I'd be tired, or I had hurt myself. And I just had never learned how to take things in steps. And that if my body was telling me to stop and that I was tired, I wouldn't do it. I would just go. I would care for people, or care for the house, or do the thing. And I'm finally learning that it's not that you can't do the thing. There's a better way to do it. And if I listen to my body, then I can do it all.
Mhm. Exactly. Sometimes you just have to pace yourself a little more. But I think ultimately, one thing we really try to help people optimize is, even their personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Type A personality, perfectionist, all or nothing is a very
Yes.
big trait. I think
Yes.
everybody who gets CFS, they have some kind of all or nothing mentality, which is
Yes.
what got them here in the first place sometimes. And yeah, it could have been a vaccine or getting COVID, but that was just the straw that broke the
Yes.
camel's back. It
Yeah.
was it was going to happen at some point, right? So once you realize that you can actually change these things or fine tune them, I think that's what gives you the ultimate power, right?
Yes.
You don't have to get rid of that part of yourself. You could just learn to use it to your advantage, you
Yeah.
know?
It's
So
powerful. It is so powerful.
yeah. So that was actually about 3.5 months ago because you really started Feb 1st and it's May 21st right now. So
Yeah.
it's not too that wasn't too long ago where you were just restarting this recovery journey, you know? What were some of the biggest things that helped you or some of the big mind shifts or principles? I know there's so many, right? But if you had to pick two or three, what were some of the biggest needle movers in your recovery in terms of what you did or what you thought? Just for people watching this right now, because they're probably like, Nicole, what is this magical thing you did? Can, how did you do it? There's so many things we could talk about, but what do you think the biggest ones were? If you had to just go off the top of your head.
Yeah. The biggest one for me was fear. I needed to understand that fear was making my symptoms worse. Right. I was so afraid of causing a symptom. I was so afraid of pushing too hard. And once I learned that I didn't need to be afraid of them, I didn't need to be afraid of the pain. Doesn't mean that it still wouldn't hurt or be very uncomfortable. Once I learned that, I was able to kind of distance myself from the fear. And that was a huge game changer for me. And to stop avoiding the symptoms, stop avoiding pushing.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't want to use the word push because push is the wrong language for me. Expanding was really key, changing some of the vocabulary.
Yeah.
So expanding was good, pushing was not. So a
Yeah.
gentle expanding till I hit a symptom. And then I changed that mindset from what you guys taught. And I allowed myself to be excited about that. Excited when I got a symptom, excited when I got an adjustment period. And that was huge because I had been so afraid of those turn adjustment periods. I
Hmm.
was so afraid of getting a day where I was back in my chair. And when I learned that that actually wasn't a bad thing at all, it changed everything, right? Like I'm not chasing the adjustment period, but I was going to welcome it. I would expand, and then I would welcome the adjustment period. And that was huge for me. And I think the third thing for me was understanding the role that emotions play in the nervous system and in all of this. And that um, I needed to start as I was doing my brain retraining, because I had done a lot of time where I was doing the brain retraining, and it would move things a little, but not a lot. But once I attached emotion to it, huge differences, like leaps and bounds in how I responded and even the length of my adjustment periods. When I could smile through the pain, and it wasn't just that toxic positivity. It
Hmm.
was I would smile and it's just be like, yeah, this is really uncomfortable, but it's okay. I know this is for my good. I know that I'm expanding. This is how I'm going to level up, and I'm going to feel so good tomorrow. And as soon as I was able to do that, again, just the world opened up for me, right? Like the next day I would have no symptoms, or I would have more energy to do more things. And I will put one more little one in there quickly. It was really important for me to understand cognitive and physical, and how you needed to balance those in order to expand, because I was doing them both at the same time. And that was also causing me to not do very well. So once I understood that the step-by-step progress of expanding cognitive, expanding physically, huge game changer as well.
Yeah. And even that, like, that's something, it would be so hard to figure that out if you never came across the information. I remember we figured this out actually probably a year into running CFS recovery programs. But, I remember Junior and we got together and he started noticing this pattern. He was like, hey, there's different buckets. And I think we knew that intuitively, but to actually put a framework around it of like, hey, if you're going to expand physically, just pull back a little bit cognitively, because something's got to give. You can't go over your threshold. Well, you can, but you're just going to have a thicker adjustment period. So you do have to balance it out. It's almost like finding this formula for it, but it's an ever-changing formula. So it's also learning to be flexible and adaptable to how your body's feeling and not being so set in stone, right? Because I think another reason people stay stuck is they're so rigid and so black and white. So let's talk about that really quickly. What were some of the biggest mistakes you made, before finding the solution to all of this, right? Which is it's probably the opposite of some of your biggest tips, which is like being terrified of the symptoms, doing this and that.
Yeah. Resting all the time, right? Staying in bed all day, staying in my chair all day, not trying little things. Again, all the supplements, which were just stressing me out because they were causing me more financial difficulty, and I wasn't getting any better. Scrolling, being on social media, right? Like being so bored and so discontented in the place that I was in. That almost feeling like this frantic energy, like I need to do something and I can't physically do something. So I'll go on the internet until I crash, until I fry out my eyes, like so many things that were really counterintuitive. And I don't know why, but it's almost like I needed the permission of the coaches to, just disengage from social media for a while. Just do it. I know it sounds crazy, but just stop for a while. Just don't. And understanding that rest is not what I thought it was. Rest isn't just sitting in my chair. It's not just sitting there with the eyes closed. Just all these, like I said, all these golden nuggets, right? Like crazy, like the overthinking. You know what? You have the power to stop it. What do you mean? My mind just going crazy. You can stop it. I can stop it. Right? Like all the talk about swatting the thoughts, like just because they come in, you don't have to invite them to stay. Like
Exactly.
So many simple things, but all together massive, just massive. And I started back to work last week on a graduated way of doing it. And I cannot tell you how many times these things that I'm learning in this program are saving me daily, right? Like you go back and the insecurities and the worries, they just keep coming. And it's like, no, Coach Krista said this, stop. Oh, and remember Coach Adrian said this. Okay, we're not going to do that. Oh, and you remember the tough love you got from Coach Junior? That applies here too. So just stop.
Oh, yeah.
And it's helping me from overdoing it. Like it's helping me to ease back in and to be successful. Like I am so excited to have, expanded to a point where I can do really long walks, and I put that back into my day. But through what I've learned, I've realized that I need to pull back on those on the days that I'm back at work. And my old mindsets pop in. And, I'll even tell you this, on my first day I was supposed to work 4 hours, and I didn't even cut it off at 4 hours. I worked an extra 10. And I was like, you know what? Miguel and I had this little chat on one of our calls about how I would keep from doing the old Nicole, old mindsets, old patterns. And this is just a little baby piece. And you need to be more careful. So sure enough, I set my alarm for the next time that I was at work to make sure that I was signed off on time. I'm stopping and I'm doing small walks through my day. Like I just keep knowing the new me, the 2.0 version that I want to be. And I just keep going back to all these things that I've learned and I'm applying them. And as you can tell, I'm just really happy.
Yeah, no,
I'm so grateful. So grateful.
Did you say instead of working 4 hours, you work 10?
No, I worked an extra 10 minutes. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you said 10 hours. I was like,
no,
what?
no, I might have. So when I went back to work, I was supposed to work 4 hours, but I worked an extra 10 minutes. And it's only 10 minutes, but I could see that was the old Nicole mindset. So I knew that for going back to my next shift, I needed to make sure that I was gone by 4, like that 4 hours cut off. And then I was like, okay, and you're also going to set alarms and you're going to get up and you're going to walk around the parking lot once when that alarm goes off. So I just, like I said, I want to be Nicole 2.0. I want to be this person that I learned that I can be in the CFS recovery program.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, this whole journey you've been on, it is the ultimate opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself into this improved, optimized 2.0 version where you're just able to squeeze more out of life. I think that for me was the ultimate goal. It was always my intention to get the most out of life as I could, but I did it in the wrong ways. I would over push, sleep late, because I thought sleep was a waste of time, to be honest, which is insane. And I was like, no, I need to be productive. I need to do stuff because one day I'm going to die. Like I would think these things at 10 years old and 15 years old. It's like, I only have a limited amount of time. So let's get to living. But of course, you know, eventually I hit a wall. So I realized that, you know, just like you were talking about, you know, pulling back and resting, it's not just sitting there closing your eyes, and it's not it doesn't feel like a waste of time anymore. It's actually just as productive as going out and doing stuff, because in having this balance of things, I'm going to be able to do more when I go out and start doing stuff, you know? So let's talk about this 2.0 version of yourself, because you've transformed over the last year, right? And you know, you've only been with CFS Recovery for just a handful of months, but you were exposed to our content about 6 or 7 months ago. What would you say is different now than maybe a Nicole, you know, 8 months ago when you were in the trenches of all of this stuff? What would you say is different mentally, emotionally, physically? Let's start physically, actually. What are the biggest differences physically? Like, what can you do now that you couldn't 8 months ago?
Everything. I can do long walks. I can do long stretching sessions. I can do some strength training. I no longer see sleep as an enemy, kind of like you said. I really welcome it. I don't feel like I have to nap, but then if I do have to nap, I don't beat myself up for it. It's not a big deal. Really focused on listening to my body. Really, really focused on stopping, assessing what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and then weighing that out. You know, especially thoughts, I'd spend a lot of time weighing that out. If it comes in, out it goes. If it has no purpose and if it's not contributing, really helped my my insecurities. I'm going to say the whole brain retraining mindset, thought processes we talk about. I have a whole lot more compassion for myself, a whole lot more appreciation, a whole lot more love. I just don't get as down on myself or look at myself as being a failure for not doing or accomplishing. It just doesn't matter. I just feel so much happier. Like I like myself more. I feel like I have more to give others. And it's not just based on what I can do for them physically. I just that compassion, right? I've got that compassion to radiate, to help, to encourage others. One of the parts I absolutely love about the program is being able to be in school and encourage one another, right? Like to be someone who's having just a rotten day and thinks that they're never going to get better, to be able to go in there and say, you know what, you are not alone. You know, totally been there, and you've got this, you've got this. Like, what a gift that was
Mhm.
to be able to do that. Just, yeah, I feel like all of me has changed.
Yeah, there's a lot. Like, when I think of all the differences, how different Miguel today is than he was 6 years ago, coming out of that hospital, or even the year prior when I was getting into the trenches. There's so many differences and different ways of thinking. But it's interesting because I'm still the same Miguel, but now I feel like I have all these tools and I know how to use them, and I know how to kind of, what do you call it? How to align my thoughts with what I really want in life, my values, and even physically, I can listen to my body. So it feels like everything is on the same team now versus everything kind of fighting against each other. Of
Yes.
trying to over push myself, then my body's screaming at me. And I'm like, no, push through. You're a champion. There's none of that anymore. It's like they work in harmony. And I think,
Yes, and you can't overstate that alone, what you just said, is huge. You are not fighting against yourself. You are working in harmony, and there is such peace that is there when
mhm,
you're not fighting yourself, and you can trust yourself, and
mhm.
your nervous system can trust you that you're going to listen and that you're going to honor it and make the good decisions based on what it's telling you.
Yes, exactly. And that trust that you mentioned is huge. When you go through all these adjustment periods, you actually start to develop this trust with your body,
Mhm.
because at first it is scary, right? It's a bit nerve-wracking because in your mind you're like, no, this is normal. People have adjustment periods. This is part of it, but your body is still questioning it. It's like, is it really supposed to be like this? Because this feels pretty intense right now. This kind of feels like those other times where we got way worse. You have to constantly remind your body, hey, it's okay. It's just the nervous system. And the reason it happened before, the reason we downward spiraled, was because we were asking these same questions, and we were becoming very fearful. So once you start to kind of train your nervous system, which is basically your amygdala, it's like a part of your brain, the fight and flight mode, survival mode, you start calming that down. You learn to trust yourself. It's just a nice feeling knowing that your body's got you, and it's not going to turn on you, and it's not out to get you or punish you. It's there for you. And I think that's one of the best feelings to have, because you trust it, it trusts you, and you're just able to get way more out of life, you
Yeah.
know? And something you said as well, being in the community, seeing the other people's wins, and being able to kind of pull other people forward when they're having a rough day. I think one of the coolest things is being on that journey alongside other people, people in a similar situation as you, um, maybe a few steps behind, maybe a few steps ahead of you, but nonetheless, all on that similar journey and similar struggle and similar vision of what you guys want for the future. So when you come in January, and there's people struggling, and you guys are on these calls trying to figure out these APs and how to navigate expanding activity. But then 3 months later, there's a whole bunch of people like graduating. It's like graduating with them, right? We just had, it was you and a handful of others.
There
I
were
think it's
five. There were
5.
five of us that graduated at the same time, and it was the craziest feeling. Because for those who don't know, there's not a certain, like, there's nothing in the program where you have to stay a certain amount of
Yeah.
time until you graduate. It's until you feel ready to respond well to life and take on the world. And to be with these same people that joined when I did, and some that joined at different times. And then all of a sudden it's like, I think I'm ready. And the coaches are like, yeah, you're ready. And it's just the craziest feeling that to have five of us that were kind of ready to fly.
Yeah.
I don't, it's powerful. Like you're not alone. And there is power being with people who are practicing the same things and are going through the same things. Um, it's just beautiful.
Especially when you're on this journey with these people, and you guys started at a way lower level, and the wins before were like, oh, I could wash the dishes, do
Right.
laundry, I could drive to the post office to send this mail, right? And then now some of the wins are, I'm going to Vegas for a few days, or
Yes.
I'm going on a camping trip or whatever. you know you see the growth, but you're doing it with other
Massive.
people, right? So it is like bittersweet. It's kind of, I know some people are sad. It's like, oh, I don't want to leave, but it's like it's time to spread your wings, and you know, perhaps we'll see you guys at the Thriver retreat. Maybe that's at some point where you guys can all meet each other in person.
That would be a dream.
Yeah, yeah. So for you, you know, what would you say to somebody who was in your shoes maybe a year ago, or when you were in the darkest points of your journey in the trenches, and they're thinking the same things you were thinking, um, maybe a few different things like, how can I get better? I've tried everything, doing all these supplements, basically where you were. What kind of things do you want to share with them here? Because there are people watching this right now who are in bed in a dark room listening, maybe sometimes with the screen off. What would you want to share with them, having been somebody who is coming out of this thing?
I think the most important thing to know is that you're not alone. This is not in your head. You're not going crazy. You're not making this up. You are not lazy, and that you can get better. You can, and you will get better. And I think don't let lies keep you from getting better. Don't let lies think, it works for them, but not for me. Don't let the lie of, I don't have the money, I can't do it. Don't let that keep you from getting better. There are ways to do this, whether it's the free content, which I can tell you absolutely works. Or, if you get fortunate enough to be able to join the program, there are levels of the program to work with the different finances. But there is so much free information. And Miguel and the coaches are so free with sharing that. But if you can get into the program, I just really, really encourage you to do that, because there's just something amazing about the community and being in the community and seeing every single day that you're not alone. It's magical what it can do for you. So, beware of that fear. Don't be afraid. Don't believe the lies. You can absolutely do this. You can get better, and respond well. Respond well to those symptoms. Everything that comes back to that doesn't matter. Don't focus on the symptoms. Don't worry about new symptoms that come in. It doesn't matter. Just respond well, and you can absolutely get well.
Absolutely. Stay focused on the solution, right? You always got to bring it back to the solution, because the survival brain, that's what wants to look out for these symptoms and roadblocks and focus on the things going wrong and really try to fix problems that may not even be there right now. Right? It's going to anticipate things. Oh, if I flare up tomorrow, what should I do? But it's not tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to flare up tomorrow, right? But if you keep thinking that, you definitely will flare up tomorrow. So it's really focusing on the solution, right? And believing in yourself. I think for you, right from the get-go, you had that thriver mentality. As soon as the doctors told you, yep, sorry, you just have to deal with this, you were like, no, I'm not just going to deal with this. I'm going to do something about this. I will fix this, which took you on this whole journey of looking for solutions and trying things where most of the time it didn't work. A lot of time and energy put into things that didn't work, but eventually you didn't give up, which led you to the solution, right? And that was the same way. And I think that's what I see with all of the people in the academy. It's they're not willing to settle for this lifelong diagnosis, this lifelong illness that you see on Google, 5% recovery rate. They're like, no, this is not who I am. There's more to life than just this. So you had that thriver mentality before you even probably knew what thriver was. You had that mentality. So I think it's so important to believe in yourself. Just like for all you people watching this, look at Nicole's story, right? And she was in the trenches in the hospital, couldn't even put words together. But here she is, not too far down the road, just getting her life back. So, Nicole, is there anything you have coming up this year that you're looking forward to? Anything you're going to do off your bucket list, or right now it's just really enjoying getting back into life?
Enjoying getting back to life. Working towards getting back to work full time. And I'm so excited that it's going to happen. And it's going to happen sooner than I even think. I'm just responding so well to everything. And just time at our trailer this summer. I'm looking forward to being able to be with groups of people again and not worry about it being too much for me, right? Just some other really simple things. And then next year we'll look forward to doing trips and things like that. And if things were to work out and I could make it to the Thriver retreat, that would definitely go on my bucket list.
Oh yeah, that would be epic, absolutely
Yeah.
epic. So,
Yeah.
my last question for you is: so far, would you say it's been a good investment joining the academy?
Absolutely. I didn't know how I'd pay for it. I just was like, I have to do this and I'm going to figure it out later. I'm just going to do it. And I did. And the money came together. And it is the best money that I've ever spent. Unequivocally, I would almost say in my entire life, it's the best money that I've ever spent.
Yeah, wow. And I'm so happy for you. And, you came in and used all the tools, came to the calls. You're such a positive person in the community as well, welcoming people, sharing answers to questions and wins and stuff. So yeah, it's been amazing to see your journey unfold up to this point. And what's even more exciting is, even just thinking about what's to come for your future. You got a whole nother, 30, 40 years left on this planet, and there's so much to do, right?
Yes.
To go from being in the trenches, wondering like, man, how am I going to get through all this, to almost getting your life back, or like literally getting your life back. It just makes you appreciate things so much more. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Once you come out of this, you realize, wow, there is a lot to appreciate. Like being able to pick up a cup and drink water from it.
Yes.
Being
Yes.
able to cut my own food, being able to take a shower every day, being able to just stand up straight and walk. Right?
And I'll go one step further with that. I am so grateful for this experience. I am grateful that I had CFS. I am grateful that I had this. I'm grateful that I had the lows, that I had the bad days. I'm grateful that I struggled to speak. I'm grateful for all of these things because it led me down this path. And without all of that, there would be no 2.0 Nicole.
Exactly.
So it's pretty incredible.
Exactly. There is no growth without challenge. And the greater the challenge, the greater the growth.
Yeah.
So, for people watching this right now, you're in probably the biggest challenge of your life, but just know that this is going to be the biggest growth period of your life. I can definitely tell you, Nicole can probably say the same thing, but you'll learn more on this journey than you did, maybe in the previous 10 years, right? Some people the previous 30 years or their whole life. This is like a condensed, ultimate, extreme personal development program, right? Going through CFS. Yes. It's like the universe just said, hey, we're putting you in this personal development program. Go figure it out. And in figuring it out, you have to learn all these things about yourself. You have to learn these different skills, ways of thinking, and you do have to reinvent yourself in many ways. But that's the only way you can come out of this. That is the only way. So, for you guys watching this right now, if you're dealing with this and you're in the trenches and you're going through a very hard time and you're wondering, can I ever get better? How are all these other people doing it? We're humans just like you. We're not aliens. We don't have some magical thing we did. It's just following the frameworks, being consistent with it, and really trying to simplify it. Just respond well to symptoms, understand what's going on. Because once you know what you're even fixing, that is the foundation where you can build off of. So if you did need some extra help, if you wanted some guidance on your journey from the coaches and really just be in a closer community, we have the YouTube channel, we have the Facebook group, the free Facebook group, but we also have the Recovery Academy and a few other solutions. So if you did want that extra help, we would love to help you out. You can click the link down below and see if it's a good fit for you, or you could keep watching the content on here, implement it. And once you hit some roadblocks, we're here to help you when you need it. So Nicole, really appreciate your time and thank you for sharing some of your journey with us. So excited to see where you're at in 6 months from now. And this was definitely an inspiring chat. So really appreciate you. And for all you guys watching this right now, always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. See you guys in the next video. Thanks so much, Nicole.
Thank you.
I'd say that CFS recovery is absolutely the real deal.
I actually felt like somebody had answered, like somebody explained what was going on, and it all clicked.